It was supposed to be another flashy tech event, until Elon Musk publicly mocked Nicholas. He didn't expect that Nicholas's wife to be Karoline Levitt, or that she'd respond with the calm power of a leader raised on discipline and truth. In a room filled with billionaires and cameras, one man stood without a spotlight and shook the nation with a single sentence. What followed wasn't a Twitter war. It was a masterclass in honor, respect, and how real strength doesn't shout, it stands. Before we show you how Karoline and her husband turned the tables on one of the most powerful men in America, comment where you're watching from and stay until the end to witness what true character looks like. The Tesla Pavilion in downtown Austin had never seen a crowd quite like this. Billionaires brushed shoulders with senators. Tech geniuses mingled with celebrities. Cameras flashed like lightning under the sleek glass ceiling of the newly minted Tesla Tower, which sparkled against the Texas night like a monument to modern ambition. This wasn't just an event. It was Elon Musk's empire on full display. And tonight, it wasn't just about technology. It was about power, perception, and prestige. Every name that mattered in Silicon Valley, Washington, D.C., and Wall Street had a seat. This gala was no ordinary evening. It was designed to showcase Musk's latest AI human interface prototype, but the real show would never make it onto the program. That began when Karoline Levitt walked in. She arrived late, not fashionably, but quietly. No entourage, no designer press release. Just a woman in a forest green dress with a simple silver cross necklace glinting at her collarbone and a man beside her who looked like he belonged on a battlefield, not a ballroom floor. Nicholas Riccio, her husband. He wasn't a celebrity, wasn't a CEO, wasn't interested in playing the game. But the way he carried himself, upright, sharp-eyed, absolutely unbothered by the glitz around him, said more than any award speech could. Some guests took note. That him? Levitt's husband? Marine, right? He doesn't look like a press husband. He looks like a sentinel. Karoline wasn't here for attention. She'd been invited to say a few words about the future of public-private partnerships and innovation. It was meant to be brief, polite, and uncontroversial. But as they made their way across the marbled floor, the air shifted. Because Elon Musk was already on stage. Dressed in black on black with his signature swagger, Elon surveyed the crowd as if he owned not just the building, but the people in it. He launched into his opening monologue with the timing of a late-night host, mixing tech buzzwords with sharp humor, jabbing at regulators, journalists, even a few familiar political faces. And then he saw her. And look who just walked in. America's youngest press secretary, Miss Karoline Levitt, ladies and gentlemen. Polite applause. Looking radiant tonight, and bringing what appears to be either a personal bodyguard or her +1. Hard to tell the difference. Laughter rippled through the room. Karoline paused mid-step. Daniel's hand gently grazed her back. He leaned in and whispered, "Keep walking." But Elon wasn't done. At first, I thought she came with a Secret Service detail. Then I saw the wedding band. So unless Jason Bourne had a career change, I guess that's her husband? More laughter. Cameras turned. Some eyes flicked to Karoline's face, stoic, tight-lipped. But Nicholas's jaw clenched. Elon smirked, then moved on to his prepared lines. But the damage was done, and not just to etiquette. It was a moment when millions watching the live stream would later pause and rewind. A moment that would travel farther and faster than any Neuralink update. Because what Elon Musk had just underestimated wasn't a military veteran or a politician. He had underestimated the power of composure. At their table, Karoline unfolded her napkin and placed it in her lap with precision. She hadn't said a word. Nicholas's eyes followed Elon on the stage, not with anger, but with something colder. Measured awareness. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. Karoline nodded. "Fine, but he's not." Because there was something Elon didn't know. He didn't know what Nicholas had done before joining the Marines. He didn't know about the families Nicholas had consoled, the names etched into the memorials Nicholas had stood before with tears in his eyes. He didn't know about the quiet years of reintegration, the nightmares, the surgeries, the silent resilience. He didn't know that Nicholas Riccio was the kind of man who could walk into a room and silence it, not with words, but with conviction. And he certainly didn't know that Karoline Levitt had never once needed to raise her voice to prove her strength. Because when you're forged in fire, applause means nothing. Only honor does. In a side room lined with LED mood panels and overdressed influencers sipping mocktails, Karoline slipped away from the noise with Daniel. "Let it go," he said softly. She looked at him, and for a moment, there was a flicker of pain in her eyes. If it were just about me, I could, but it's about every woman who's ever been disrespected for standing beside a man in uniform. Every spouse who's been dismissed like decoration. Nicholas nodded slowly. "So what now?" Karoline stared at the stage. "Now I return the favor." Nicholas placed a hand on her arm. "You don't need to." She met his gaze. "I already promised myself I would." A producer backstage looked up as Karoline approached. "You're not scheduled." "I won't need long." He hesitated, then gestured to the spare mic. "You're live in 90 seconds. Karoline nodded. Nicholas watched her from the side, silent. Not because he was afraid for her, but because he knew exactly what she was capable of. Because the truth is, Elon Musk had just spent 10 seconds mocking a Marine. But Karoline Leavitt was about to spend 3 minutes reminding the world what America still honors. The crowd didn't know what was happening. The lights hadn't dimmed. The music hadn't cued. No one backstage had given a signal. But when Karoline Leavitt stepped into the light on the side of the stage, microphone in hand, time slowed. Even Elon paused. He turned, a slight smirk still lingering. "Karoline, everything okay?" She didn't answer him. She turned to the audience instead. "Since Elon brought my husband into the conversation, I figured I should respond." A hush fell over the room. Glasses stopped clinking. Phones lifted. It's easy to make jokes when you own the room, when the audience laughs on cue, and when everyone wants to be in your orbit. But power without humility isn't brilliance. It's just noise. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. "My husband didn't come here for attention. He came to support me quietly, like he always has. But Elon Musk decided to make him a punchline, a joke, and not just him, every military family in the room." Now the audience was still, uncomfortable, but riveted. Nicholas Riccio spent 10 years in the United States Marine Corps. He didn't do it for recognition. He didn't do it for followers. He did it because when his country needed him, he showed up. She pointed calmly toward Elon, whose grin had evaporated. "You? You show up when there's a keynote, when there's a spotlight, when there's stock involved." Some gasped. Karoline's voice softened. "The truth is, I didn't need to say anything. My husband doesn't need defending. But you mocked service. You mocked respect. And that deserves a response." She walked closer to center stage. "When I met Nicholas, he didn't talk much about his deployments. Not because he had nothing to say, but because he didn't need to prove himself. Honor doesn't need applause. It just needs memory." And then she looked toward the balcony. Veterans in dress uniforms, seated in the back rows as guests of honor, were already standing. Karoline turned to Elon one last time. "And for the record, comparing him to Jason Bourne? That was cute, but Jason Bourne wouldn't have lasted a day next to my husband." That did it. Laughter erupted, not mocking, but joyful. Applause followed, then cheers. Even some of Elon's closest supporters stood up. Karoline took a breath, stepped back, and added one final line. "I don't need to be a mogul to command a room. I just need to tell the truth." With that, she walked off stage, her silver cross catching the light one more time as the applause thundered behind her. Backstage, Nicholas was waiting by the curtain. His expression hadn't changed. "That was something," he said, low and warm. Karoline smiled. That was just the beginning. The applause from Karoline's speech hadn't even died down when Elon tried to recover. He stepped forward again, laughing nervously, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit. "Well, I guess I've just been fact-checked by the First Lady of Washington," he said with a forced grin. "Hope the rest of tonight comes with less fire and fewer Marines." A ripple of awkward chuckles fluttered through the crowd, but the damage was done. The room had shifted. Even Elon knew it. You could feel it in the way people leaned back instead of forward, how phones weren't pointed at him anymore, how Karoline's name was already trending across every platform. And then he crossed the line again. "Let's not confuse being married to someone in uniform with actually understanding leadership," he quipped, "because I know what it takes to lead empires, not echo war stories." That was it. The words hung in the air like ash. Backstage, Nicholas had been silent. But now he stood. He looked to Karoline. You good with me walking in there? She didn't speak. She just stepped aside, and Nicholas Riccio walked out. No fanfare, no rush, no spotlight asked for, but every camera followed him. He was dressed simply, no medals, no grand attire, just a charcoal gray jacket over a black dress shirt. But it was how he walked that made people stand. Calm, controlled, like he'd walked toward worse before. The room quieted as the floor parted. Elon looked up and blinked. Nicholas took the mic without asking. His voice was calm, low, the kind of tone that didn't need to rise to fill a room. You joke, I remember. A hush. Nicholas turned toward the crowd, then back to Elon. You lead empires? Great. Then lead with decency. Lead with the awareness that your words don't just ripple, they crash. You have reach, so use it to elevate, not diminish. He paused, then slowly said the line that would echo across America. She earned her voice. You just act like you deserve yours. The silence cracked. Then it broke. The crowd erupted. Not a standing ovation, not yet, but applause that built like a wave of respect rising to the ceiling. Nicholas didn't wait for the moment to land. He handed the mic back, gave a single nod, and walked out. It wasn't bravado. It was discipline. It was presence. And it was far more powerful than anything else that night. By the time Nicholas returned backstage, Karoline was already on the phone. Press requests were flooding in. Clips of Nicholas's short walk and sharp words had already been viewed millions of times. I didn't do anything, he muttered as he sipped water. Karoline looked at him. That's exactly why it worked. By morning, the tech gala was old news. The headlines weren't about AI anymore. They were about a moment, a man, a microphone. Nicholas silences Elon Musk with a single line. Karoline Leavitt redefines grace under fire. Power couple reminds America what respect looks like. Clips of Nicholas's words flooded X, YouTube, even LinkedIn. Even some of Elon's most loyal followers couldn't defend what he'd said. But instead of walking it back, Elon did what he always did when challenged. He doubled down. That afternoon, Karoline received an envelope. Not from a journalist, not from a supporter, from Elon Musk's legal team. A formal notice. Cease and desist. Defamatory remarks. Legal action pending. Karoline stared at the paper, then slid it across the table to Daniel. He read it silently, then smirked. He wants a war in public, he said. You ready for that? Karoline didn't answer. She stood, walked to the safe in the corner of her office, turned the lock, and pulled out a small black flash drive. Written in her own hand, in silver ink. Musk 2017. She'd held on to it for years. Inside, a chain of emails, memos, screenshots, receipts. In 2017, Karoline had been a low-level aide on a congressional veterans task force. That year, Elon Musk had pledged support for a bipartisan military outreach initiative. He'd made big promises, media coverage, funding, endorsement, and then, 2 days before the launch, he pulled out. His reason? Doesn't align with my brand. Karoline had documented everything. She never used it, until now. That night, Karoline appeared on Fox News with Tucker Green. She didn't mention the gala. She didn't rehash the insult. She calmly slid the flash drive across the desk. Mr. Musk wants a retraction. Here's my reply. Tucker blinked. You're making this public? Karoline nodded. I'm not interested in lawsuits. I'm interested in truth. She faced the camera. You want to talk about respect? Let's talk about promises made to veterans. Let's talk about the ones who aren't trending, who don't have hashtags, who are still waiting on support they were promised. And then she said, I'm not afraid of billionaires. I'm afraid of forgetting who we're supposed to fight for. Online, America responded. Veterans posted from every state. Photos, videos, letters. I was at that event in 2017. Elon promised our kids laptops and never showed. My dad sat in the front row for a man who never arrived. She's telling the truth. Even political opponents couldn't deny it. And Elon? He went quiet. No press statement, no tweets, no appearance. Daniel leaned over the couch that night as they watched coverage. You think he's going to fire back? Karoline didn't blink. If he does, I've got another flash drive. In the days that followed, Musk's legal team fell silent. Not a word, not a post, not even a passive-aggressive meme. Because Karoline hadn't just countered, she had ended the debate with receipts, truth, and dignity. America didn't rally around a tech giant. It rallied around a Marine's wife, who refused to back down. And while the headlines cooled, the impact did not. Karoline and Nicholas were invited to speak at the National Veterans Honor Summit in D.C., not as politicians, not as influencers, but as Americans who chose courage over comfort. Karoline stood at the podium in a navy blazer, the silver cross at her throat glinting in the spotlight. Nicholas stood behind her, arms folded, silent but steady. "I didn't stand up to Elon Musk because I enjoy conflict," she began. "I stood up because I'm tired of watching powerful people mock the very values this country was built on: honor, sacrifice, duty." She paused, her voice steady. "Some people think defending your spouse is weakness. I think letting silence become permission is worse." The crowd stood in waves. To every military family that's been belittled, to every veteran who's been forgotten once the photo ops end, this wasn't about a billionaire. It was about drawing a line. The applause was thunderous. Even members of the press stood. Later that night, while sipping tea back home, Nicholas looked up from his phone. "Keanu Reeves just posted something about you." Karoline blinked. "What? What did he say?" Nicholas read aloud. "Courage isn't loud, it's calm, measured, and it shows up when others make excuses. Respect to Karoline and Nicholas. America needs more of that." She smiled. "Well," she said, "at least I know who to call if they ever make a movie. If this story moved you, if you believe respect, service, and truth should never be mocked, then stand with us. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a moment that matters. Comment below. Do you think Karoline did the right thing by standing up to Elon? Share this video with a veteran, a spouse, or someone who still believes dignity deserves a voice. Because sometimes the loudest mic in the room isn't held by the richest man, but by the one who speaks with honor. This is Charles Stories, and we're just getting started.